My pastor's family is rich. They own many homes. This story takes place in North Carolina. In 2003, my family moved to NC. Our relatives go to church, so when we arrived, we lived with them, and they also took us to church. The church members are very nice to us. The church members told our pastor that we needed a home to stay. The pastor said that he only had one house left. Other houses already had tenants. He didn't seem to want to rent that house to us. I guess if he rented it to us, then he would have to make it cheaper, because we are newcomers from Southeast Asia, and we are also church members. Our relatives continued to ask our pastor about his house for 3 weeks. Finally, he said he would take us to see his house after church. We went to see his house, and it was a big house with 6 rooms. It's a big one-story house with a long hallway, 3 rooms on each side. The pastor said that he usually rented that house for $700 a month, but since we are his church members, he would only rent it for $550 a month. It's actually really cheap for a house that big. However, he did say to us that he never wants to rent that house out to his people and church members. He said to my parents that his house used to be a palliative home care back in the 1960s. That means it is a home built for those families who did not want their sick loved one to die at their own home. So they placed their loved one there in that house and had a nurse take care of them until they die. That means there are a lot of people who died in that house. The pastor said if we liked it, then we could live for as long as we want. But if we don't like it, then just tell him and we can move out anytime. No lease was signed. He also told us that we are in his church and we are God's people, so don't worry. We can always pray to God, and God will always help us. I remembered the first day that we moved in. All of our church members came. We all sang and prayed to God to warm up the house. Because we put our faith in God, we were not scared. We didn't know that we were letting our guard down. My parents shared a room. My maternal grandma lives with us, so she sleeps in one of the middle rooms in the hallway. My mother is the only daughter, so she took my grandma in to live with us. We are a Christian family, so we do not live by our tradition that the maternal grandma cannot live with the daughter and son-in-law. When we moved into that big house, I have my own room because I'm the oldest kid. I remember that first week, I woke up at 3 a.m. to get ready for work. I usually get up around this time to get ready and then drive to work and be there by 4 a.m. I work at a gas station, so I usually wake up early to open the store with my cousin Jerry. I remember I got ready in the bathroom and then I came out. I shut my door. It was dark in the house. However, I heard like someone is sitting at the kitchen eating something. I could hear the spoon hitting the ceramic bowl. Ding, ding, ding. I walked to the dining room and I could see my grandma eating something at the table with the window open. Outside was a full moon. She did not turn on the light. It's as if she was eating in the dark, but I guess the moonlight helps her see. I turned on the light, and then she stopped eating. I said, "Grandma, I turned on the light so you can see." My grandma was still holding her spoon, but her right side can't move. She was just holding her spoon on top of the bowl. She has some kind of tremors, and the spoon was hitting the bowl. Ding, ding, ding. I opened the refrigerator and grabbed a Monster Energy drink. Then I turned back to look at Grandma, and she had her head turned to look at me. But her body did not turn. Her body was still facing the table, but her head did a 180-degree angle to look at me. She was smiling at me, but only the left side of her face was smiling and blinking. Her right side of the face was frowning. I woke up and it was just a dream. But that dream seemed so real since the dream took place in our house. Luckily, I'm not working that day. I looked at my alarm clock and it was 2:58 a.m. I got scared, so I pulled my blanket to cover my head. I'm not sure if I was still half dreaming or I'm actually wide awake, but I could hear as if someone is eating a bowl of rice and water or soup in the dining room. I could hear the spoon hitting the bowl ding, ding, ding. Everyone in our family had very scary dreams in that house. The house is always so dark inside because of all the tall trees in the backyard and the all-flower bushes in the front. We talked to our pastor, and he said he can pay us someone to come and trim all the trees and bushes. After the trees and bushes were trimmed, the house was not as dark inside. We did not know whether trimming the trees and bushes made the spirit angry. Shortly after that, one rainy night, while we were watching TV, my grandma came to my mother. She told my mother that her right arm feels numb and asked my mother to massage it. But when she talks, her words were slurred. All I remember was that my mother looks at my grandma and said, "Mom, why do you talk like that? Are you okay?" Right after my mother said that, all the lights and electricity in our house went out. It was raining hard, so there was a blackout in our area. My mother sat my grandma down on a chair. My father then came over with a flashlight to look at my grandma. They were asking my grandma if she felt dizzy. But by this time, my grandma couldn't talk. She tries to talk, but she can't. She just blinked at my parents. We put my grandma into our van. My parents and sisters took her to the hospital. After my parents and them left, my younger brothers were playing the Game Boy Advance. I was in the dining room calling our pastor to tell him what happened. Our pastor and his wife said they would go to the hospital right away. After I hung up, I heard knocking coming from my grandma's room. Then it stopped. I thought it was noises from the outside, but then when I walked to the couch, I heard it louder. I stopped and looked into the dark hallway. The knocking continued. My brothers heard it too, so they all stopped playing their video game and just looked into the dark hallway. I grabbed my father's flashlight and tried to turn it on, but it was dead. I kept pressing the button to turn the flashlight on, but it was dead. I shook it a few times, and then the light suddenly turns on. As the light hit the dark hallway, we all saw a pale, ashy face with long hair looking at us and quickly withdrawing into my grandma's room. We all got scared and ran outside onto the front porch. We stayed outside until 9 p.m. when the lights came back on inside. We all did not want to go inside, but we needed to call our church member and our relatives to come help us pray. My brothers and I stuck together and walked through the door back inside. We all just stayed together very close, and I made a call to my relatives and asked them to come help us pray. After they came to help us pray, some youngsters stayed the night with us to help warm up the house. When my parents came back home, we told them what we saw. My parents told us not to worry and just pray to God. Grandma's still in the hospital. The doctor and nurses told us it's not looking good. We don't know what's going to happen. After 3 weeks, my grandma was discharged back home from the hospital. She was paralyzed. My parents said that she suffered a stroke. She can't move her legs and her right arm. She can only move her left arm a little bit. The doctor surgically inserted a tube into her stomach so we can feed her with formulas. She can no longer eat anything by mouth, according to my parents. A few weeks later, one night Jerry and I went fishing, and then we came back to our place late. I told him not to go home. Just wear my clothes and sleep over for the night as it was getting late. Jerry agreed to stay for the night. Everyone in my family was already asleep during this time. Jerry and I ate some stir-fry pork with ginger that I quickly made. After that, I gave him my clothes and a new underwear and told him to go shower in the bathroom. It was 1 a.m., and Jerry was showering while I was watching TV when I heard knocking from Grandma's room. I heard the knocking 3 times, then it stopped, The second time, the knocking got louder. I was scared because of what we'd seen during that rainy night when Grandma was rushed to the hospital. However, I turned on the light in the hallway and then opened Grandma's door. In Grandma's room, we left a little light by the bedside for her, so when I opened the door, I could see that she wasn't sleeping yet. Her eyes were wide open. Her left hand was banging on the side of the hospital bed. When I went in there, she was still banging her hand. She couldn't talk, so I just looked at her and told her that it's late, and for her to go to sleep. She had a stroke, so she can no longer talk or move except for her left hand. I came back out to watch TV. Once Jerry was done showering, he came out to watch TV with me in the living room. I told him that I'm going to shower, and if he's tired, then he can go sleep in my bed. While I was showering, I heard our home phone ringing and ringing. After I showered, I came back out and saw that Jerry was not in the living room. However, the TV was still on. I thought maybe he went to sleep in my room or something. I walked to my room and turned on the light, but he wasn't there. I thought maybe he forgot something from his car and went outside to get it. I went to our front door, and it's not locked, so I didn't lock it. I thought he went out to smoke or get something from his car. I came back to sit on the couch to watch some TV. After about 10 minutes, he's not back yet, so I went and opened the door to look outside. He wasn't there. His car was gone. I came back inside to look at our phone, and the number that called earlier was Jerry's cell phone. During that time, I don't have a cell yet, but Jerry does have a flip cell phone. I called Jerry back and he picked up. He was still driving. I asked him where he's going, and he told me that he's driving home. He sounds scared. I asked, "Are you okay, dude?" Jerry said, "Dude, earlier when you're still showering, right? I was watching TV and your grandma came out. She walked to the kitchen and ate a handful of the stir-fry pork you've made earlier, before she goes back into her room." I replied, "Are you sure? My grandma had a stroke, and she can't move. She can't even eat or chew. That's why the doctors insert a tube to her stomach so we can feed her with formulas. I don't think my grandma can get up and walk." "I know that. I know she can't move or get up and walk. That's why I'm so scared when I saw her walk to the kitchen," Jerry told me. I told him not to be scared. Just pray to God and be careful driving home. After that, we hung up. Right when I hung up the phone, there's knocking coming from my grandma's room again, but I just walk to my room and go to sleep. It's just Grandma banging her arm on the side of the bed again. I feel like I just closed my eyes and fell asleep when my father started shaking me and said, "Get up. Get up now, son." I woke up to the sound of my mother crying from Grandma's room. It was already morning. I can see sunlight from the windows. My father said, "Did you feed your grandma last night? You know the doctor said she can't eat or chew and not to give her any food by mouth. Why are you youngsters not listening?" I told my father that I didn't feed my grandma last night. I got up and my father and I went to my grandma's room. Grandma was already dead. I saw a few pieces of pork on the side of the bed. My father said my mother dug out those pork and rice from Grandma's mouth with her fingers. There are still some, but it's all the way at the back of Grandma's throat. She choked and died on the pork I cooked last night, I asked myself. My hairs stood up. I felt cold and goosebumps were all over my body. Tears flooded my eyes and I couldn't speak a word. I was so scared. My father asked all of us kids, and everyone said they haven't got up to feed Grandma last night. That's when I told my father about what Jerry said to me last night. We called our pastor and church members. Everyone came and prayed for an hour before we called the coroner officer. After the coroner came and checked on my grandma, we called the morgue to come and pick up Grandma's body. Our church did my grandma's funeral and buried her at the cemetery. After that, my pastor told us that the house we currently lived in was his first house in North Carolina. When him and his family first lived there, they would hear knocking from that same room Grandma slept in. We asked him why there was knocking in that room. Our pastor told us that a long time ago, a church member sold that house to him. That house used to be a palliative or hospice home care. There was an old female patient that cannot walk. That patient was placed in that room where Grandma slept. The nurse that came and took care of the 6 patients didn't want to go in that room because the patient in that room is very mean and unpleasant. The patient or old lady would yell and spit at the nurse, so when the patient peed or pooped, the nurse wouldn't go and clean her up, so she usually banged on the side of the bed to get the nurse's attention. Later, that patient died in that room. Every patient that came to that house pretty much died there. That house is the last stop for everyone. But the hauntings start after that mean and unpleasant patient died in that room. My pastor told us that if we still want to live in that house, then just lock that room up. Use it only as a storage room. We lock that room and only use it to store away things that we don't really need. However, there are nights when everyone's asleep in their room. On quiet nights, sometimes we can still hear knocking from that room where Grandma had died. Because of how haunted that house is, our family moved out. That's all for this video. Thank you for making all the way through and supporting my stories. Have a wonderful day or night.